6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular board meeting, December 14th. We'll go ahead and do a roll call, which it looks like everybody is present tonight. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll do a quick review of the mission statement and the district priorities. The Interstate 35 Community School District exists to develop lifelong learners and responsible, productive, successful citizens in an ever-changing society. The district priorities: number 1, articulate and support a cohesive, student-centered pre-K through 12 vision for continuous school improvement. Number 2, engage in effective teaching and relevant learning for the 21st century. And number 3, operate with fiscal integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Everybody should have received the budget. I was thinking budget time. Everybody should have got the agenda. We need a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
And now we have the open forum. Did anybody sign up to speak?
I don't believe so.
Nobody? Residents, students, parents, guardians, and staff members of the district may address the board about relevant topics. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. A speaker's participation is limited to 5 minutes per meeting. We ask speakers to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees or students or their performance. Which moves us to our next item, which is the education spotlight.
So tonight we have Real Treat. We have I-35 Cafe, which is a group from our culinary classrooms that kind of started this year, and I think has been a pretty big hit with the staff. And they're going to come and do a little presentation for us.
Grand entrance.
I'm not sure what, I don't,
Not much.
they have a cart that they wheel around with all kinds of goodies on during the day, so. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you guys?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
There we go. Yeah.
So we introduced the I-35 Cafe, so if you guys would tell us who you are and kind of what you're doing this year.
I'll start. I'm Wolfborn. I usually make eggs and bump around a little bit.
Great latte maker too, right?
I'm Aiden Caster, and I'm kind of just help out anywhere needed. Oh, I'm Maisie Boyd, and I make a lot of hot chocolate.
Yeah. And I'm Mrs. Boyd, and I just let them do it, let them run the show.
I'm Addie Wilson, and I do whatever.
I'm Michael McClellan, and I just help whenever it's needed.
I'm Eric Lawyer. I make frappuccinos and just help whatever I can.
We have several that aren't here tonight too, that couldn't make it. So we've got about, 8 to 10 regulars that typically show up every day, Monday through Friday. When it works out on Fridays for basically that morning session when they would be in the auditorium waiting, they're able to come in and run a coffee shop. So we get started right around 7:45 and we go till about 9 o'clock when they have to report to their homerooms. And then it kind of flows throughout the day too. So I have some other classes that pitch in, but the bulk of our work is in the mornings before school starts.
So, do you sell coffee? Is that what we're doing when we say coffee shop?
So, we sell the drinks. We don't necessarily sell the coffee. We sell the drinks we make with the coffee.
Okay.
Yep, so we sell coffee and then we have a whole bunch of different blend, like mochas and lattes and frappuccinos, and we're developing new flavors all the time. And you can see all of that online on our website on the order form, because the list is just constantly growing. I think we're up to 5 pages. And then we just added smoothies, and then we also have food offerings. So we have muffins and breakfast burritos, biscuits and gravy, cinnamon rolls, all sorts of different items that you can eat too.
So when you sell these, where does that money go? What do you use to fund that money?
Well, I guess it kind of goes right back into the cafe, so we can keep buying supplies and help keep our business going that we have.
Yeah, we don't have like a specific thing we're doing this for. We just kind of wanted to see what would happen and if we could make a profit. And yeah, as we continue to make more and more money, we're able to add maybe more equipment or just more variety down the road. Maybe a new kitchen. I don't know. We'll see how we do.
How many people take advantage of it on an average day?
I'd say quite a bit. Like, we all try to make the best of what we're working with, and we all try and have as much fun as we can.
Good.
Yeah. We have some people that come in from outside of the school, and so we have kind of a pickup situation, and we did a couple of different like holiday, what would you call it, activities where you could boost somebody, where a teacher or a student or whoever could buy coffee for somebody kind of mysteriously, and then we would deliver it. And then we did You've Been Gobbled for Thanksgiving, and right now we're doing You've Been Jingled. So if you want to show appreciation to a friend or just to say thank you, you can surprise somebody with a coffee or food. And then we're doing gift certificates too, so we've had quite a few of those go out. It's an idea for teacher gifts for kids. They don't know what to get, for a teacher, or coworkers sharing a gift card with coworkers because it's something they know that they'll use. But I would say on average, Mondays are pretty slow, but by the end of the week, I bet we're doing at least 20 a day orders. And then Thursdays and Fridays get kind of crazy. Seems to pick up as the week goes on.
So do the kids, if the kids get it, like a student gets it, are they able to bring that into the class, or
That's
is
up to
there a
their
restriction?
teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, so they need to make sure it's okay with their teacher.
Okay.
And most of the teachers, I think, have been okay with that. We did run it by Angie in the cafeteria just to make sure we were on target with the nutrition requirements put out by the government, I guess. And so we have to kind of fit within those guidelines. If anyone were to ever ask us for our recipes, we have those all available. So that shouldn't be a concern.
And so far, you're at least breaking even, but maybe breaking a
So
little?
far, I actually asked Thursday or Friday, Will, do you want to tell them where we're at? I think I shared it with you.
It's been a while since I read it. I know our profit is about $2,000 per 100, around there. We sold buying supplies around $3,000, and then
And then we brought in over 5,000. So we're sitting right at about $2,400 of just straight profit right now.
Great.
Yeah. And we started keeping track of that specifically in mid-October. So that's 2 months.
Nice. So, this is for the kids. What do you like about what you're doing in the cafe? What's your favorite part of being in there?
I like making drinks, so I have my own drink, that I make for Miss Mayers. She absolutely loves it. And every time she comes in, she's like, "Can you make my drink?" And I was like, make it for her, and it makes her all happy. I just really like doing that.
It's a good thing when Mrs. Makers is happy.
Yeah.
It only takes-
Have you told Mr. Makers that, so he can get some gift to them?
I just like the experience. It's fun and it's kind of an experience. Like with me being 13, I can't really have a real job. So it kind of lets me have like the experience of what I need to do in a real job. And I get to have the fun of being around all my friends and even making more friends while I'm there. I like that I get to be with my mom, and I like to make a lot of hot chocolate. That's my favorite thing to do. I just like it because it's fun and it's great to experience how to make the coffee and learn new things that I didn't before.
I like that you actually experience when you're younger, so that you, if you want to go into a job that's something like this, you have more experience than if you're just starting off.
It's fun experiencing like different types of drinks and stuff that you haven't tried before, and just seeing how happy people are when they order it and getting it. It's really fun.
So it's definitely better than sitting in the auditorium from 8 to 9?
Yes.
All right.
Next semester, Maddie Williamson is actually going to be doing an independent study, running the coffee shop. So she's going to come in every morning, and she's been coming in the last week or two, kind of learning the recipes. She's working with us on recipe development. I know she just got a job up at the bar in St. Charles. She's going to be doing breakfast there. And so hopefully we gave her a little bit of a head start with just getting her in the door and starting to learn how to make some of the recipes. And so yeah, she's going to kind of manage these kids and help with the progression of the coffee shop. So it'll be kind of fun too.
So the kids can purchase coffee too, or?
They can.
Okay.
High school. Middle school can come in and get it on Thursdays. It was Fridays, but then with Fly we switched it in. They really love the hot chocolate.
Yeah, a lot of them get hot chocolate more than coffee.
Keeps Maisie busy.
Right. Any other questions from the board? Well, so since Mrs. Boyd started with the foods program and diversified it and all that, it's been a really fun program to watch. And I'm excited that you guys are involved with it. The coffee shop, I would never even thought about doing something like that. I always got the to-go lunches, but I've never been in for coffee, so now I have to probably set up some time to come in and have coffee. So.
You can order to have it delivered if you're not able to come in to the school, right?
Yes.
Yep, they'll bring it out to the parking lot to
To my house.
As you're driving through Truro every day, it's right here.
Your commute
They'll
through Truro.
bring it out to your car to you.
Very good. Anything else? Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. I can send a message. That's all. All right, we'll move on to the principal's reports. Mr. Kastner?
Sure. So it seems like we just met not long ago, but you know, the student council, as you walk down the hallways, I think they deserve as many shout outs as we can possibly give them. They really did a nice job around Thanksgiving, and they came with some initiatives for the holiday season, Christmas specifically, but they've decorated our halls again. They came in yesterday and were here for about an hour in the afternoon, maybe two, and did all of this decorating outside of the doors yesterday afternoon. So very, very big thank you to Mr. Smith and the student council for kind of setting the tone for this last week here before we take a little bit of a break. But otherwise, we have our Wildwood trip retreat going on right now. We sent juniors and seniors there today. Freshmen and sophomores go tomorrow, followed by the middle school kids split a day on Wednesday. So the 5th and 6th grade go in the morning, 7th and 8th grade go in the afternoon. So lots going on right now. Another holiday thing. Mrs. Steinloggy and Mrs. Dickinson have done a great job of supporting families in need within the area. So I don't know how many mornings Rose has pushed in groceries or gifts or whatever that they're doing. So we packed stuff in for Thanksgiving, and she was carrying turkeys and stuff in again today for Christmas. So they've done a great job with supporting some of our local families in need. So I think that would be the happenings between the last time we talked to them.
Thank you. Ms. Dutry here.
I wanted to report a little bit about our middle school building goals. I know last time I couldn't be here and I did watch and Steve talked about the secondary goals as a whole. So one thing, the middle school is using the same goals except for we've added a literacy goal. After taking our FAST assessment this fall, our scores were about 63% of our students were proficient, and so we saw that as an area of concern and something we wanted to work towards improving. So we reached out, especially Heather Wells, our instructional data coach, who's been a huge part of this goal and what we're going to do to address this concern. And so she reached out to the AEA, and they've been a great support. We are currently working on 2 literacy strategies, symptoms expansion and reciprocal teaching. So those 2 things are things that the AEA will be coming in and giving our teachers specific PD on, because after we saw those FAST assessments, we decided to dig a little deeper and find out what our students needed. And so we used an assessment called written retail, where the kids read a passage and then they're asked 4 questions about that passage, just to get an idea of, are they struggling with summarizing, or are they struggling with details, or what specifically do we need to work on? And so after giving that, 40% of our kids were proficient with all of the things that we were asking them to do. 41% had the majority of them, but they were lacking in just the summarizing part. 14% of them had most of them, I'd say about half of them, but they were missing the key details piece. And then about 5% of our students weren't proficient yet in any of the areas. So we're working specifically on, like I mentioned, the symptoms expansion and reciprocal teaching to hopefully help students with some of those specific skills. So our goal is by the end of the year, when we take our spring assessment, our proficiency rate will, we were at a 63%, so our goal is to get that up to at least 70% of our kids proficient with that in reading assessment that we take through FAST.
Was that has that assessment been done in the past? And so what were the differences from years past, I guess?
Really, our scores are not that much different than they usually are in the fall. And I think that's why it kind of struck us as a concern, is they're not where they should be. So how can we find specific things that all our teachers in the middle school, even if you're a math teacher or a science teacher, you can help support that literacy piece of our students' education.
So these FAST measurements you're speaking of, are they, that's 5th grade through 8th grade? That's entire middle school, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, that's the average for the entire middle school.
Okay.
And our elementary takes the FAST assessments also. So we do have data for them. I don't have it with me, but we have data for our kids from when they were, in 2nd grade and on. The thing about the FAST assessment is a a lot of times it has to do with fluency, and so that's why we went ahead and did the written retell also, to get a little more information about, not just can you read the amount you're supposed to in the right speed, but are you understanding what you're reading? Can you summarize it? Can you tell it back to us? Do you know what the key details were? Those kind of things.
So they're gonna come in with some PD days, you said, the professional development. Are they, I mean, will that be in January or yet in December or when?
So they actually are coming in during that open campus time when our kids are getting the opportunity to do things like the cafe. The AEA is coming in those mornings. So we've been meeting pretty regularly on Wednesdays from 8 to 9. And so it started out with, okay, here's our fast scores, what are we going to do about it? And then we decided we needed to dig in and know a little more about the data. And so then that's when we gave the written retell. And then we even met and we scored them together to make sure everybody was kind of on the same page of what is right and what's not right. And so now we have kids grouped into like the 4 boxes, which is the 4 percentages I gave you about either they are completely proficient or they're just missing the summarizing or they're just missing this. So that way we can kind of see where our kids fit. And then, so then next Wednesday, when we get back from break, we're scheduled for them to come in and start talking about some of the those 2 specific strategies that I mentioned. And then the AEA also offered, and we're planning on having them, once the teachers start implementing it, they're going to come and help us do some walkthroughs also to give teachers feedback about how the implementation is going, instead of just saying, here's what you should do, good luck. Really trying to give them some feedback about those things and make sure that we're making progress.
Any other questions? Thank you. Jeff?
Kind of like Steve said, it's only been a few weeks since we've done this before, so not a whole lot has changed. I did want to take the time to give some credit to our social committee. They kind of came up with some dress-up days for this week, something to make the week a little bit more festive for the kids. So today was Don't Be a Grinch, Dress Festive. Apparently I read the memo wrong because I dressed as a Grinch. So I thought about sporting the hot green Grinch onesie for you guys, but it was just too hot. So, but some fun stuff for the kids. And then another thing our social committee does is they set a reading goal for each year. So last year we kind of had a magical theme throughout the elementary, and we just said that if they met the goal of reading 10,000 books by the first week in March, that they would have a magical surprise. And that ended up being, we had his name is Ben Uland, I think, from Adventureland, came and did a magic show in the spring for the kids. That was really well received. This year's goal was, again, if they read 10,000 books by, I believe, March 2nd. We have kind of a camping theme, and so I get to pitch a tent on the roof of the building if we make that goal of 10,000 books. We are right at that halfway point, so we're knocking on 5,000 books. And so we're on track, I believe, to meet that goal again. This is the 3rd or 4th year we've done it. We've met the goal every year. Seems somehow magically they always come up with a couple thousand books there those last few weeks if they need a big push. But something exciting, any way we can get kids to want to read outside of the building is a good time to do it. So I wanted to kind of celebrate that success the kids are having. Mrs. Denlinger kind of kicked up the bar this year too and said if the kids reach 13,000 by the end of the year, she's kicking in $1,000 worth of books for the school. So hopefully the kids can reach that goal as well. So it's kind of a little stretch goal for them beyond that 10,000. But I think the pace that we're setting, as long as we're able to finish out the year, we should be able to reach that goal as well. So something to look forward to, I guess. The thing I'm trying to figure out is there's really no flat spots in the roof, at least on the elementary side, so I'll have to figure something out there.
Don't create a leak, please.
Yeah. I'll probably fall through into a classroom.
No tent stakes.
No. Oh, I can't hammer those in. And then we did meet as an elementary last Friday after the early out, and we kind of went through. We had an AA representative, a math consultant, along with Natasha and Mrs. Denlinger. Kind of led a little session on math assessments and how we are using, very similar to what we're doing with, we have the FAST test as a screener for our elementary. What are we really doing for math screeners, and how are we taking that to the next level? So we're just kind of continuing that deep dive into coming up with some sort of a fluid system from elementary on up, as far as what are we doing with our data, how are we looking at it. There for quite a while we were collecting the data, but we didn't really understand how to digest that data and turn that into a diagnostic and figure out what it is that the kids are missing, and then use that to drive our instruction. So again, we're solidifying those practices to hopefully be able to improve instruction overall. But just want to kind of give a little follow-up on that. So something to kind of, we'll look forward down the road. I'll report back with you guys as we kind of continue that work. So other than that, 4 more days. I think as of tomorrow, I need to knock on some wood, we will have 0 kids quarantined out of the building. We have 1 out right now, and they return tomorrow. So I think that is huge. So hopefully we can continue that drive forward as well. So it's awesome having all the kids in the building. It seems weird when all the metro schools are like, we're going back to school. Like, we've been in school. I don't understand how they haven't figured that out. But anyway, if I don't see you all, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
That's great.
Thank you. Are there any questions for him, Mr. Tessel? So, to the 3 administrators who are here, I just want to thank you guys for helping keep the kids in the school, because it's no small feat what you've done, and your entire staff at the school. It's been impressive, and I really don't know what else to say, but thank you for that, because I know how much work it is, and I know it's not just the 3 of you, but I know it's everybody. But you guys have to lead some pretty dedicated people to maintain what we're doing, and the numbers are impressive. So thank you. All right, Karen.
So just a few things. One of the things that I want to introduce you to tonight, and then we'll do a follow-up meeting in the next week or in the next month or 2, is I'm working with Carla Day from the AA and Susie Bentley and Amy Witchman. So Susie Bentley is our regional director, and Amy Witchman, who was our regional director who served I-35, actually took a different job. And she does teaching and learning through the AA now. And so last year, I would say we were commiserating one day, but we were collaborating about some of the challenges with the AA and the way that they serve rural schools. And so part of that is that we've had a shift. We now are no longer served by the same AEA group that serves Carroll. We are served now by the group that serves Indianola. So it makes a whole lot more sense for logistics, which is why you hear we had our AEA people in for English, and we've had our AEA people in for math, and I know Nicole's team is working with them at the at-risk. So we're able to get our resources in the building a lot more frequently because they have a tremendous amount of wealth of knowledge that they bring. But the other thing that we're trying to do, or one of the things that I firmly believe, and I don't know that I have any basis, there's probably no research for it, but it's one of those things that we're talking about, and it's what we're kind of looking at for basing future, is lots of times the AEA will come in and do a presentation. They'll tell us how to do, let's say, gradual release of responsibility. They'll do a presentation, they'll give our teachers strategies, and then they'll go. And that's pretty much the model since I've been in Iowa. So for 20 years plus, that's kind of been the model of how the AEA supports. And I think they're evolving, but my whole point of contention is we need help with the actual implementation. There's so much online now that teachers can read, watch a class, learn the material from any number of resources. The AEA could be one of them, but it's about how do we get that resource then done, implemented in the classroom at a high level. And so we need people who know those programs and those strategies to come in and actually help our teachers as they're teaching those, to make sure that they're learning tricks or asking questions the right way, or kind of developing their craft. And so we're trying to flip the model for AEA. So instead of them being the one that comes in and necessarily gives us the here's the strategy, now let us know what else you need. We're doing the strategy work with lots of different people, and then they're coming in and going to help us do the implementation and the monitoring and having the conversations around the data, because that's where typically we fall off as schools, and I don't mean just here, I mean in general. And so I said, I want the staff to have the knowledge to be solidified that if the AEA disbands for any reason, we can keep doing business the way that we do business. And they know the processes, and they know the protocols, they know what questions to ask each other. And so that's kind of how some of these English, math, especially at the middle school, Jeff's group at the elementary, that's how we're kind of designing those, so that we're relying on those AEA people and their expertise to come in and actually help us as we're trying to put those into practice. So that's a pretty significant change. We've slated it for about 24 months worth of work. So we'll come in, I'll have the other 3 ladies come in, and we'll go through what that's going to look like over the course of the next 2 years, and how, or what it will do, what the goals are for that. We did have to get it approved through the whole AEA process, and they're very excited. They want to possibly use it as a model for other schools. So we just have to kind of work through it. And probably not the best year to be doing it, but that's why we pushed it back a little bit. So instead of a 18 to 20 month process, it's going to be probably 24 or a little more. So we had a district leadership team meeting last week. That's a great group. We started conversations around our assessments, specifically grading practices. I know Steve's group at the middle school and high school has had a lot of conversations around that. I think the biggest challenge we have right now is trying to find that balance between having conversations about some of those possible considerations for change and just surviving COVID year, right? We're trying to find that balance. So we're being very deliberate in what we're doing with that. So that team, I think, is excited about some of the work we're talking about. We also had a facilities committee meeting last week, and we have some recommendations. I think we're in the January meeting. Mr. Smith and I will bring in recommendations for trophies and trophy cases, and we'll also kind of give you an overview of kind of what the budget looks like and what some of the ideas are on that list for the facilities committee. We also are talking about having a subcommittee of that group meet. I think we've talked about at this meeting before. We have lots of renovations that we need to consider or think about for our outdoor facilities that we currently have, and we also we have to ask the question of do we want to maintain and just do what we need to with those places, or do we want to look at future 3 or 4 or 5 years? What do we want to do for the potential for either growth or for improvements or new facilities somewhere? So that subcommittee is going to meet in the next couple of months. And then Mr. Smith and I, we've got activities going, which has been going well. We're excited about our kids being out there competing. And we also met with the Booster Club to talk. They wanted to do some concessions, but we told them what our concerns were and just said, if you can come up with a plan, we'd be happy to support you. So we'll see what they come up with. We're looking maybe at the beginning of the year. If they've got some things in place for that. We wanted to get through our first couple of events to make sure we had some flow with people going in and out, and make sure we had some things taken care of. But so that's a lot of curriculum stuff in the last couple of weeks, which for me is really exciting. And then we have our holiday get together for the district. We've had several of them already from different social committees, but the one that you're invited to is on Friday from 12:30 to 2:30. We'll be in the Commons, so that's all I have for this week.
Hey Sharon, you mentioned about a subcommittee, a little bit about facilities and what we're going to do. How is that committee related to the facilities committee?
It's members of the facilities committee that have agreed to be on the subcommittee.
Okay.
And I think there were maybe 8 or 9. And I'll send, when I send the minutes out to the whole group, there might be a few more that get added to it. But I would say it's a pretty diverse. Cindy, you guys were there, Jeremy, Cindy. I think it's a pretty diverse group of people that were there. A couple of coaches, some parents or community, obviously administrators, but.
Thanks, thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
On the AEA, so the AEA is basically a reference or a resource for our community, our students and stuff, or our teachers to use. How is the changing from strategy to implementation? Like PLC group, how is that going to kind of interact? Is that so the AEA? How are they going to interact without overlapping? I guess.
So a couple of different ways. They can come to the actual PLC. So when we get the PLCs at a high functioning level, and what they should do, right, and with best practices, they should be looking at not only the teaching practices of the teachers in the group, bringing them to the table. So let's say we're a PLC, and I say, guys, I'm getting ready to start teaching a unit on the Holocaust. Here's what I want to do. Here are my goals. Here's what I'm thinking about for assessment. Do you see any gaps, right? So I'm bringing that to the table. So they can actually join that group and be part of that group and give me ideas, along with all of you, about how I can make that better. So that's one piece, but creating that structure so that we as a group can talk about it without the AEA being present is another piece. So how do they facilitate us getting to that point? So I bring my stuff in, we all know what we're doing, we know what kinds of questions to ask, because now I can take the experience and knowledge from you and with me and go back even if they're not here. But they said they'd come in and help those groups establish those protocols. Gotcha. And then actually going into the classroom, so when I start teaching that, they're willing to come in and watch me teach it, knowing what I want to do with it, and then give me some feedback on how that's going.
Okay, so is it safe to say that PLCs are a group that helps uniform teaching across I-35, whereas the AEA is now helping us understand the best of all practices from other districts they serve?
Yes, I would say that's a fairly accurate way of looking at it, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else for Mrs. Detwinger? Jeremy had to step out, so we'll move on to the consent agenda items. Everybody should have received the past meeting minutes. Here on our handouts are the monthly bills and financial statement. Open enrollment link was in the agenda. And resignations and contracts, looks like we had one. Nicole Edwards-Reed resigns as an associate. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda items?
So, do we have for the nutrition fund?
What's that?
For the nutrition fund, it's a negative?
It is, yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit? I mean,
I'm going to pull it out.
because last year we're at plus 25 and this year we're at a negative 13.
Well, last spring, when we were closed, we continued to pay everybody. So that kind of started the downward turn.
For the nutrition fund.
So the nutrition fund is completely separate. The money from our food program goes in there and it stays in there and it has to pay everybody out of that. So it doesn't ever come out of the general fund like some of our funds balance it.
Okay.
You know, so like activities, if we don't have enough in activities, we can pull from the general fund. Food nutrition is only unto itself. So we can only pull money from that to pay for benefits and salaries and
It's self-sustaining.
self-sustaining, yes.
And then same with the childcare.
We're discussing the consent agenda.
I guess, do we have less people that we paid then? Or I guess I'm trying to understand why we're in the negative with both years, but what's the drop?
I think the child care is slowly turning it around. As long as we keep it full, keep the students, parents using it for their kids.
Right.
I think that'll be okay.
Okay.
The nutrition fund is concerning. We're not the only school with that issue. But remember on October 1st, we went to
Free.
where it's free for everybody. Our hope is that that'll be enough to turn it around. Time will tell then.
Well, and I think the other thing that we have to kind of keep in mind is we're buying a lot more supplies this year than we have in the past. We buy individual wraps, containers of a lot of things because we can't serve in bulk like we used to. So I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. We also don't have high school kids here on Fridays, which is, and now we don't have middle school kids here on Fridays. So, I mean, all of those things are factors because we still have elementary kids here. But I do think that, the challenge is that when we lost March through May, all of our revenue, but we still had all of our, well, not all, we didn't have the food expenditures, but we had all the personnel expenditures going out. And we know that's typically 80% of any budget. I mean, we knew that was going to be and that's why I think I sent you guys all an email about advocacy. So that we're going to see a lot of things come through with CARES money, with COVID relief money. And that's why we sent in the information for FEMA. I mean, I just think we have to look at all means possible because we aren't going to recoup some of this unless we advocate for it. And we knew it was the right thing to do, but it did put us behind, so.
Has there been any feedback on that free lunch program that started in October as far as from the kids are concerned? Menu options or such?
I think they're able to serve.
Yeah, they can still come back and get seconds. They can also get a la carte. I mean, they really kind of made that so it wasn't an issue for us. So kids can come back. We haven't had, I think a lot of kids are taking advantage of it, which we're glad about. But as far as restricting kids in any way, we don't see that because they can still bring in and do the second meal and do a la carte. Which, when they first presented it to us, you couldn't do that, and then they changed the guidelines, so.
Right, so that is a concern. We need to watch that closely and try to turn it around. So we don't end up with 40,000 in the hole.
Right.
And there's nothing that happens at the end of the year, right? That's one that we can run negative. I mean, there's no true up, like, I know you said we couldn't take it out of general fund, which one?
We just have to turn it around.
Gotcha, yep.
Technically, can you run negative? Yeah. I mean, we had a negative balance on our books from the daycare how many years ago?
Right.
And
it just stays a negative forever, right? And it's noted.
Ted won't ever tell you that because he'll get calls from the state asking us why it's negative.
Right.
But.
And it's I think what I will check though is to see if we can do a general fund transfer. I was doing some research on it. In Minnesota, you can't have a negative more than 3 years without doing a general fund transfer. Of course, that's Minnesota, because I was concerned about it as well. But,
just something to keep an eye on.
What kind of hurt us in the past couple of years, and we've talked about this as well, is the construction. Where we had everybody eating. We were out at the bus bar, so I didn't necessarily see all of that, but it wasn't ideal where we had students set up to eat. So maybe they weren't getting seconds. That affected our lunch program.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Keep going?
Go ahead. Okay.
All right, so that moves us to the open enrollment.
We gotta approve or consent.
Yeah, he
We're-
went through them all. We just-
we're-
Oh, we had all, went through them all, okay,
we
perfect.
just
We're ready
need
for
a
it.
motion.
Need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items.
Properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda items. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, items for discussion, the at-risk plan.
So A and B actually go together, and I think we always talk about them together. Nicole Boat and Rose Dickinson are here to talk a little bit about our at-risk plan, and our budget is actually obviously tied to that, so they go hand in hand. The modified allowable growth is the amount that we request for, from the SBRC, as we look at creating our dropout prevention program. So, ladies, would you like to share about the at-risk program?
Yeah, I'll talk first. Rose and I work together, Rose Dickinson and I, I'm the at-risk coordinator this year. It's my first year in this position. I sent to you guys kind of the at-risk plan for the year 2020, or for 2020 to 2021. Just a couple things I want to talk about, key things for this year. As Sharon had stated earlier, we have been working with the AAA ladies, specifically Amy Shupe and Stacy Warren. They work in the social emotional area with the AA, and they come down with us monthly and sit, and we are in meetings. Our goal this year is to create an at-risk program that is uniform K-12. So from kindergarten to seniors, we have the same processes. We meet, because it does look different. We have different groups with the elementary, and obviously with the middle school and high school, we meet with different groups on that. Rose and I stay the same in each one of the groups. But we also really want to focus on making sure that our at-risk program is both targeting academics as well as social emotional health, because we do know that they both play a role off of one another. One of our big plans this year is to create the Student Success Center, which would technically be my room right off to this right here. This is where students come in. Right now, it's called I'm the at-risk coordinator. So when students come, it's that kind of scary word of at-risk, or I'm working with the at-risk, or even calling a parent and saying this is the at-risk coordinator. You know, it's a scary word. We like the idea of turning it into that Student Success Center. Because also students are coming in and out. Some students may be there for a year or more. Some students may just be a couple months, especially with some of our remote learners returning who weren't doing work or who weren't being caught up or missing some of that stuff. We've had them, they're only with me for a little bit of time, and then they transition back out into the general ed classroom. We've been, one of our biggest things working with the AA is that we are going to roll out at the March Professional Development Day with teachers. Rose and I are going to present with the AA ladies on what the at-risk program looks like, the PowerPoints, what that is all entailing, and where we go with that. Couple things too, our focuses this year is our BAT process. If you want to go to page 3, or if at some point on page 3 I have a flow chart on there. And that's just kind of how our process is, how we figure out who is determined at risk. A student concern demonstrates concern, either a teacher notices that and submits what we call a BAT referral, or we notice it from some of our data that we collect, being grades, being low test scores, being a variety of things. It's also on one of my pages what a student would be considered at risk. And then they kind of flow through that chart. If you look at the bottom there, it does say student data is reviewed so they can fade or exit program. We're not just going to kick a kid out as soon as they reach schools. We are in the process of creating what that fade looks like. That's something that we're also working with the AA ladies on. So what does that look like to fade out of the program? Because we still want to obviously give them the supports that they need and check in with some students. And also, it could also be that they're referred for additional intervention. We may realize that, yeah, their academics are looking great, but maybe we need to refer them to a different process. We've also been using a system called the IM4 system, which is something that Marie Shomo, our AAA liaison for school psychologist, has kind of brought to us, where students are being implemented in the middle school level and the elementary level. I think we have about 3 kids on that right now. For example, it's a check-in, check-out process, where it's this data that we look at, and kids are on where they meet with me. We have a student that is just identifying stuff themselves, like they're in the class and they identify if they are struggling or not, and then I meet with them, or it could be any general ed teacher. Basically, the at-risk program this year, our plan, so some students are receiving extra support, you know, especially with the Fly Fridays. That's been nice. We can then get that tier 1, tier 2 interventions in the classroom. Some students just need organizational skills, especially some of those that are returning from remote learning, you know, making sure everything's how they can figure out what they need to get turned in, whatnot. And then some just need a quiet space to work. We realize that they don't really work so well in those loud study hall or big classroom sections, so during independent work time, they can come to my classroom to work as well. Some successes that I want to point out, we've had a couple of remote learners who returned who weren't doing work while they were gone, and when they returned they had a lot of Fs returning back to school, and we had 2 specifically off the top of my head that have no Fs. They're all up to Cs and Bs right now, and we're off the ineligibility list. And then also we did have one that we were able to exit out and refer him on to the DMAC HiSED program, and he just received his graduation through DMAC. So we've had some successes already this year. This year it does look quite a bit different with the remote learners and everything, but we're adapting and we're using this as a year to really create the best functioning at-risk, and hopefully every year continue to grow.
I know this is your first year in this position. What would you say is the biggest challenge with the uniqueness of this year that you're facing with the at-risk program?
I think the biggest challenge that I've noticed has been more the organization and getting kids used to that being self-sufficient. How can they function without somebody, especially when you're a remote learner, when somebody's not on top of you? Because even if you do have mom or dad home or a guardian, they're probably working from home. So one of our biggest challenges and something that we focus on is that organization of, well, how can you grow from this? One of those skills is how do you take, it's not just that they come in here and get work completion, you know, teaching them, we have a schedule, okay? So you were behind in 6 classes, we got a lot of makeup work to do. So we're gonna focus, you know, biology on Monday, you know, math on Tuesday. And so trying to figure out those organizational skills so we don't get into that mess again.
Do you think the academic versus the social and emotional is just due to COVID, or do you think that's just an ongoing trend that we're going to have to?
It's an ongoing trend. I think COVID is playing a role in it, but I think it's an ongoing trend, and I do think they play hand in hand together. And that's too why Rose and I have been really working together to make sure that we are not just targeting just academics or just social emotional, that it's all kind of around the anxiety, the stress of the situation.
Yeah.
Do you have more students in your at-risk program now compared to previous years, what I'll say pre-COVID? I mean, has it really changed the numbers for you?
I think there are a couple, yeah, that maybe would have ticked onto the at-risk spectrum. We would have saw it and been like, yeah, we should probably watch them. But with the COVID and the break that they had in the springtime, just being away from school and not in that setting, that we are seeing ones that are just kind of being forced into the program a little bit more than they would have been. They would have, I don't know if I'm making sense, they would have been just ones that we would have kind of watched and made sure that we kept track of, and now they're full into the program. But our numbers do change often because of that, because I've had some remote learners. I had a remote learner who had all Fs, and now he doesn't have any more, and so I meet with him maybe once a week on Fridays, so I'll stop into my room, but he's got the skills. It was just the being gone.
I think to answer or to add to that is in one of the reports that you have in your packet, and it's the at-risk dropout prevention application that we do. And I don't know if you typically pay attention to this, but typically we have around 4 or 5 students that we consider probably either returning students who didn't graduate with their class or potential dropouts, meaning they don't have enough credits to be on track to graduate. And usually we have 4 or 5, and this year we have 13. We talked about that earlier, that we knew this would be one of the conditions as a result of COVID and kids not necessarily being in the building and having those remote things. And so we are seeing, I see that as a very stark difference from what we've had in the past. Now that doesn't mean that they're all going to drop out, obviously, and that's why we are working, I think, very hard. But that's to me the concern. We'll have kids in and out for social emotional all the time, just like we will for grades. And that's going to continue to be a challenge. I would say that one of the things that we haven't talked about a lot with at-risk that I think is really important is that connectedness to school. And I know that Rose and Nicole are doing a really good job of being that connect for kids, but helping them establish that connect on their own is obviously going to yield us the most success, but if they're remote, they can't do that. So, or it's harder to do that, so.
Given that we're in a position where we can have in school most of the times, I think the connect is easier to see. Are there larger districts, what are they doing? If they're either a hybrid or fully remote, are there things that they're doing that we can kind of learn from?
I think
because
that-
they're in a different situation. I don't know.
That would be the next step too, to reach out to some larger districts, because we are lucky that we are full-time or hybrid on Fridays and I can pull kids, because I do see the struggle when I've had maybe about 2 of the program who've had to be quarantined for a little bit, and getting them to log on. We set up a Google Hangout every day, and maybe they get on once. You know, it's one of those that I think the next steps would be to reach out, because if we do go fully remote or even half-time, that's going to be a big struggle. I think getting that connectedness, we're going to lose that.
It's much more easier to make the connection in person rather than through an email or over a Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I think in all honesty, those larger districts that we're talking about are going to have astronomical at-risk programs as a result of COVID.
Right, I'm a sure thing. Or just have, I mean, basically flush years where you can go back to take the same school year over again. Right? Just, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Nicole.
Do you want to add right now, or do you want to wait?
Well, I'm talking about remote learning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything about at-risk yet.
No, I'm
Okay.
We got these first 2 items we can do, and then we'll move on to that. So the at-risk plan, and then the at-risk plan modified allowable growth, with 2 separate motions. We need a motion and second and roll call vote to approve the 2021-2022 at-risk plan, and then we'll need to do the same thing for the modified allowable growth.
I will move to approve the 2021-2022 at-risk plan.
And I'll second that.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded, and we do need a roll call vote to approve this plan. We'll go ahead and start. Jeremy, aye.
Roger, aye.
Andy, aye.
Sarah, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Okay. Now, the at-risk plan modified allowable growth, we do need a motion and a second, and then another roll call vote to approve this.
I move to approve the request to the School Budget Review Committee, SBRC, for modified supplemental aid for the 2021-2022 dropout prevention program in the amount of $211,776 for expenditures necessary to implement the 2021-2022 at-risk and dropout prevention plans, as approved by the Interstate 35 Community School District Board of Education.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to approve the motion that was just given to you by Eddie. All those in favor? Well, no, this is a roll call vote, so Jeremy, aye.
Roger, aye.
Andy, aye.
Sarah, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Now we can do this in that corner.
Yes, thanks, Rose.
Okay, I just kind of have some numbers to present to you in regards to our remote learners this year. We started off the year with approximately 83 remote learners. Currently, we have 72. We have had a total of 117 students who have been a remote learner. That's not a student who is quarantined so far this year. We have 5 liaisons that follow up with remote learners in regards to grades, Schoology questions, technical issues, and information that needs to be communicated from the school. And looking at our 72 current remote learners, 15 are grades K through 4, 29 grades 5 through 8, and 28 grades 9 through 12. There are some students who have been very successful with remote learning. Their grades are good and they feel that remote learning is suiting them well. There are some students as well who are current remote learners due to being high risk themselves or having a family member who is high risk. There are several of our students, however, that have struggled with remote learning. The lack of structure and accountability that is inherent in in-person education has caused concern for remote learners. One of those concerns has been attendance. 7 of the remote learners, 5-8, have been placed on attendance contract, one of which we filed truancy on. 13 of the remote learners, 9-12, have been placed on attendance contracts, with 2 of those students choosing to do homeschooling instead, and 2 other students that we have not been successful in getting engaged into school. Another one of the concerns has been grades. 14 out of the 29 remote learners, 5-8, have at least 1 D or F. 16 out of the 28 remote learners, 9-12, have at least 1 D or F. There has been positive feedback from students and parents in the middle school where recorded and live presentations have become more readily available. For Live Fridays have also given remote learners an opportunity to come in to meet with teachers in person, to ask questions or when problems arise. Have any questions for me?
So with the Fly Fridays, given the opportunity, do we see a lot of the remote learners coming in?
Some. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I don't have a number off the top of my head. I could get that for you if you want an exact number, but
Any remote learner who has a D or an F, we call on Thursday. So every Thursday. So they're made aware every week that they've got a D or an F and they have that opportunity to come in on Friday.
But they don't come in? They don't always come in? Is it an option?
It is an option. So if they wanted to just remote at home that day, they could, but they're given the opportunity that they can come in if they would like.
and
So-
many of them set up times to meet with their teachers via Hangout or whatever electronic means they might
Do it
establish
that way.
if they don't come.
So, you said it started off with 83 in the fall, and then now it's at 72.
Yep.
So was that, those kids that came back, is that by choice?
Yep. I mean, we can't force anyone to come back. I would say, though, that when students are placed on an attendance contract, we have a very upfront, real discussion about if we're going to continue this, what does that need to look like? And just, there's only so much support you can offer when you're a remote learner. And Nicole and I have taken like some remote learners and they've returned early and then they just stay in our room until the actual return date. But at least they're here and they have that structure and accountability that otherwise they struggle to when they're at home, you know? So I think we start really encouraging it when we're at an attendance contract.
Can you define what an attendance contract is? I'm
So an
not
attendance
familiar.
contract would mean that you've missed 15 days of school.
Okay.
And so if you're still compulsory age, an additional 5 absences would mean we would refer for truancy. If you're not compulsory age, meaning you're 16 or older, then that's when we look at if you have 5 additional absences, are we looking at needing to withdraw from that class because maybe I'm sitting at 8% and how can I pass that class when I'm over 3/4 of the way through?
Okay.
So there's 30 out of the 72 that are in, you said, I think have D's or F's. That's obviously much higher than in school, I would think.
Or no?
Maybe. It's probably pretty,
No?
Because a D or an F, it just means one.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have multiple, but do you have the most recent eligibility list on your computer? I know it got sent to me yesterday or today.
Today, I can pull it up.
Okay, because we can give you an average of what it is at the high school level and at the middle school, how many students we have that have multiple Ds and Fs as well.
Okay,
That maybe
so-
aren't necessarily remote, but we can give you a kind of a
I can give
comparison.
you a total number. It doesn't indicate on there who's remote and who's not.
No, that's fine.
And with all this crazy COVID and everything, what can the board be doing to better help these kids that are here? You know, whether they're remote or whether they're in person. I hope that you would bring concerns if you have them, like if we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Because we're so concerned about safety, I feel like some of these kids are falling through the cracks, and if we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing, I'm happy to listen.
I'm just going to speak very openly.
Well, right.
So there are some kids who are remote learners due to health concerns and risk factors. There are some students who have chose remote learning because that opportunity presented itself, and I might have nothing to do with COVID and I'm choosing remote. And so that's a difficult situation because you have the right to choose to do that. I feel like we've been very upfront in those situations and just being honest on here's what this looks like. You know, I share with parents, I'm new to this too, but in the last 4 months, like I need you to know that I see a lack of structure as a huge concern. Like Saturday mornings, I plan to clean my house every Saturday morning. It doesn't always work that way because I find 22 other things to do at home. And so that's what I've seen a lot of students fall into. They maybe have the best of intentions, or then when I start to fall into a hole, I just don't open that computer. It's not there. I don't have to face that. Where when I'm in person, I gotta walk back into English. I gotta walk back in, and it helps hold me accountable. And so I don't know of anything the board can do to be more supportive. I think you are supportive. It's just difficult in that situation, you know?
Right.
That's why we've taken kids back early who it's not the return date yet, just because when you're sitting with 5 Fs, we just can't continue to sit at home, you know? And so for students, we've had some students who have really turned it around, like who were sitting at 5 Fs and returned and put in that work, you know? And we've had some students where we had to withdraw from a couple classes because we weren't gonna pass them no matter what, even if we turned in everything.
The hard part to establish is what is, I don't know if I'll articulate this correct, how far is too far gone? Meaning that if I have a student that has a 10% in a class, how are they able to recover that class? You know, we've had some kids, as Rose said, make some pretty heavy turnarounds in 3 or 4 weeks. Some of that is because we recognized the structures that they needed to have. We were able to put those in place, and quite frankly, they came back to school. And that we knew that. I mean, you can see that coming months out, but they've got to make that choice to get themselves back here. That's not something we can mandate. But it's the challenge is knowing at what point do we say, okay, Steve, you've got 8% in American Lit. We're going to drop you from that class and this class to focus on the 3 that you are getting 50% in, because you've got a chance to pass these 3 and not. And that's the world these 2 live every single day. Not just with remote learners, but just as a whole, with students that struggle academically as a whole.
Well, with what Ms. Vogt said, the prioritization, right? That was key, because like sometimes I feel overwhelmed, but I'm like, where do I even start? And then you just have to write it down and kind of help. So to your point, start with the classes that you have a chance to pass.
Sure.
What happens to these seniors? I assume some of the 9 to 12 are, seniors. What happens when they don't have enough credits to graduate in May? Can they come back for an additional year, or do they go to the DMAC program, or do they just not get a degree? And do they know what that?
They could return.
You can return for 1 year.
You can.
You can have a
Okay,
fifth
so
year.
there's no age limit or 1 year.
So
20,
you-
I think, is the age.
Yeah, well, 21 is the age limit, but you can, if you're considered a dropout, that's why you get two numbers for dropout reports, which makes it confusing, because you have a 4-year dropout rate and a 5-year dropout rate. So if you drop out in the 4 years, you can come back for a 5th year and actually graduate, and it doesn't count against your dropout rate. So it's a little confusing, but you do get an extra year. A lot of times it's making up a class in the summer.
Yeah, I was
or-
going to say, to answer your question, we will either, A, have them work on an ingenuity class. If we can establish it soon enough, we've been able to get those kids done and still be able to graduate with their class. This is all work that goes on behind the scenes that either these two do or Mrs. Steinloggy do, and they're really good at what they do. So they either take an ingenuity class before they get to graduation. If it's past graduation date, we could either take an ingenuity class in the summer, which is our credit recovery program. They could choose to go to DMAC if they wanted to and graduate with a DMAC diploma, but if they do that, we count them as a dropout. But we still get them a diploma. So I mean, that's how you have to weigh out some of those options. Or if they ultimately chose to come back the next year, they could come back in the fall, take whatever classes they need to take here, and be done as an early graduate or whenever they get finished.
So remote learning, we're required to offer that right now. The state's requiring that, right? Now, you don't have the exact numbers, I'm sure, but how many people are doing, or how many students do you believe are choosing remote learning because of legitimate concern versus just convenience? Just, hey, it's an option, I'm just going to opt out and take that. Is it 5% or is it 35%? Somewhere, I mean, just, can you give any type of ballpark on that?
So the difficult part is, it's easy to say COVID,
Right.
you know, and so that's hard to know.
Okay.
Because I would say the majority say COVID.
But that's not a prerequisite to choose remote learning at this point, right?
I don't know. I could-
I guess you,
There's really nothing that says you have to disclose any reason other
Right.
than you're choosing as a parent for your 2 boys to remote learn.
right.
I always ask, like, if you don't mind me asking, can I ask why?
Okay.
And so that is typically the response. I feel like a support, though, in the middle school, a lot of those teachers are doing either recorded or live. So the student has to actually log on at a certain time and be on Zoom. And a lot of parents, a lot of students have really done well with that. I think we're moving towards that at the high school. I just think there's only so much you can do at one time, but I think that is probably one of the most supportive things we can do is to have that available and encourage the kids to be on.
There were 58 kids on the report sent out by Tiffany today. And so that's students that have 2 Ds or 1 F, whether they're in person or remote. It doesn't indicate.
What grade is that?
That's 9-12.
9-12.
Yeah, so roughly a quarter of our kids.
A quarter of our kids?
1/4.
Wow.
And that's pretty typical.
Yeah, that number has hovered around 60 almost all year. Now, I'd have to go back and pull reports from years past, but I would say it's comparable. I don't know that it's been, there's probably those students that have 1 or 2 Fs, may have 3 or 4. That number seems to grow for the kids that are struggling, and it'll be up 10 or down 10 depending on the week, and quite frankly what projects do and what students did or didn't get it done.
That's higher than I would have thought.
Me too.
Those students' parents are called and notified as far as their student needs to be here on Friday. So the students notified, the parents call every Thursday by I know that because I do it. And these guys are working with either students that they commonly work with or remote students. So if we've improved on any of our practices this year, which these guys are doing well in the establishing that processes department, communication home has been head and shoulders above what it has been in years past. Not just out of the office, but from teachers and from student to teachers. So I think that's important for us to establish those open lines of communication, good or bad, with parents. But I've gotten to know some parents rather well over the last 6 months, just because we talk once a week about their students' progress. So
We also are offering an 8 to 9 time in the morning, that open campus time in this part of the library. Rose, I, and Miss Steinloggy are in here, and we bring kids. This is a place for them to work. We do have another center, the ICN room for students who are just here, who maybe don't need to work on anything. We've created a tutoring center. We have some student tutors. We try to get them matched up with people so we can do some of that assignment completion. Or, I think having those months off, even though we were required to do work at the high school level, I think the kids coming back and still going through, I think we're seeing the fallback from it. We're unfortunately seeing it right now where it just hasn't caught up with kids yet. I'm back in school, I have to do these things. But we're trying to give them every avenue possible to complete these things, as well as talking with parents, as well as, opening up ourselves and giving more student, tutoring as much as we can.
I know it's a little off subject of the remote learner update, but as far as the Fly Fridays, when we call students in, whether it be middle school or high school, students ask, I don't know if it's a request for their attendance or, I don't know, demand attendance, whatever it is. Is there a lot of students that ignore that request for them to come in on Fridays? I mean, is it more than what you'd have as a typical absence?
I'm going to let you guys answer that first, because I'm curious to know how you'll answer that. And then we can tell you, we have attendance records for that.
Okay.
You mean like the required students that are supposed to be here on Black Friday?
Yeah.
From what I see, I have everybody that needs to shows up for me on my end,
Okay.
For our students. If not, I usually hear when I call, the parents will tell me, but I've had no one skip out on me on a Friday.
Okay.
I would say that number is fairly high for us. For a gen ed student, probably 80 to 90% attendance rate. Only because we follow up with, that's a day they're expected to be here. So
Okay.
Tiffany is good at keeping track of that attendance for us, and we'll notify if they're not here.
Okay. Because that was legitimately one of the concerns with Fly Friday, is they'll see it as a Friday off and struggle with actually coming in on Fridays. So
Anytime we've requested kids, either the parent has been very open about, there's illness in the family or whatever might be going on. I don't know that we've ever had a situation where we've not been able to get a hold of a parent to at least get an excuse or a reason where they were or were not.
okay. Thank you.
They look different for everybody. Like I know we worked with a group of kids last week who came in because they're remote learning because of family pre-existing conditions. And so we had to make that look a little different because they didn't want them to interact with other kids, because there are still kids in the building, and one of the reasons why they're home is because of that. So it takes a lot of maneuvering, and these guys do that maneuvering. So Rose, it was just a kind of a fun story. Rose is never going to answer my call again, just so you guys know, because I called her and I said, Rose, I want to visit with you for a few minutes, and she comes down, and she's always in such a good mood. I said, I think you should be in charge of our remote learning plan. And then she's just like, oh. But she has done an outstanding job. And that's the thing I don't think people realize is taking something from nothing and really kind of, the obvious motivation, I think, for both of these ladies is they care tremendously about kids and their success. Without question. And so they will go to houses. They will, help parents find resources. And I can't speak highly enough for what they do. But I also know that it's daunting and it's sometimes frustrating. But they come in every day, and they just, I think, are doing an amazing job of working with all of our kids, whether they're in the building or not. And This year, that's especially challenging, but they also continue to do all the other stuff, wrapping presents and, getting meals out and doing the food pantry. And so our district is extremely lucky to have such dedicated people, and I just can't thank them enough, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And I did look at the middle school. We have 28 with Ds and Fs and 9 are remote learners. So about a third.
Okay, early retirement.
So I put the packet together like we have in past years. We have 10 eligible early retirees based on the criteria of at least 55 years old and having been in the district for 15 years. And the breakdown for those is very similar. I went with the same numbers that we used in past years. So if you look at the document, it spells out a lot of the specifics of what's possible. If we have up to 7 retirees, they would get the cash or the HRA payout of $30,000. If we have 8 retirees, it would be $26,250 per person. If we have 9, it would be $23,300, or if we have 10, $21,000. Now, I know we've talked about having the possibility of 10. I think that we could float 30,000 for 10, we'd have to levy it, which I think we'd have the movement in our levy to do that this year if we chose to. If you wanted to do 30,000 for all of them and not have it stair step down if we do get 10. I don't anticipate getting 10. I already know one that's on the list that has indicated to me that they are not going to retire this year. And I've had 3 or 4 indicate that they probably will. So there's 5 or 6 out there that just haven't communicated. So we can do it. I structured it this way with a $300,000 kind of total. Because Ted and I think we both felt comfortable with that. But if you want to increase that, we can do that. And it's not 300,000, I misspoke. What did we base this on?
You get 10 of them.
Yeah, I can't remember what the number was, but the same one we used last year, so. Because obviously if we have 30,000, we have 10, that's 300,000, so. It's, I think, the 2,
So you're
it's
210.
10,000.
Oh, 2 and 10, thank you, I knew it was not.
Schedule.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't 300, but we talked about 300. So we have those 2 options, but the one in here is the 210.
And when you say levy, that would be increasing the overall tax rate, or would it be
No, I think it
changing
would
it
be
from
shifting who
management
we,
to
yeah.
general? Or
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, not necessarily general, but maybe debt
overall
service.
tax rate.
Yeah. I think we could keep our tax rate, and I just think this year is going to be a little different because of COVID. I just think we're going to have different conversations than we ever have around our levy rate, but I feel pretty comfortable that we can make that shift to cover 300,000 in our current tax levy that we have. Would you feel comfortable saying that, Ted?
Right.
Based on what we know now, I'm going to say.
And they always have the opportunity, if they do get 10 and they get the lower payout, they always can opt out, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not like.
Yes.
They're stuck once they.
Right.
Okay.
And to be clear, if there is 9, all 9 go that lower rate. It isn't the first
Correct.
7 get 30
Correct.
and then.
Correct.
Okay.
It's written, on this one, it would be 23.3.
Yep.
Each one of you.
Yep.
So we feel really comfortable with the 210, but we could do probably the 30,000. But we didn't get any feedback, so we wanted to give you guys both options.
I think the pro rata is the way I would like to see it, the 210 maximum, if for some reason we have 10. Because I don't know that it's, even though they're segmented into elementary, middle school, and I don't know that it's good to lose 10 teachers off a base of, in 1 year. So if there's a little bit of a, I don't know, that's just my thought.
I would agree with that. I like the way it's written.
All right, we would need a motion and a second to approve this.
I'd move to approve the early retirement package as written, or as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the early retirement package as presented. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, second reading of the 200 series of board policy. This does require a motion and second and a vote to approve the second reading of the board policy series. Do we need to read through it again?
No.
We read it the last time.
Yep, we went through it last time. Nothing's changed in those 4 that are listed there, so they're the same we talked about last time.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? We do need a motion and a second to approve the second reading.
I'll move to approve the second reading of the Board Policy Series 200.
Second that.
Properly moved and seconded that we approve the second reading of the 200 series board policies. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the first reading of board policy 502.12. This does require a motion and a second and a vote to approve the first reading of the board policy. I will go ahead and read the first reading. Code number 502.12, student mask use. The board recognizes the need to ensure students and staff are able to learn in a safe learning environment to the extent possible during the health crisis, example, COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, students will be required to wear masks when in the building. Exceptions may be made for extracurricular activities and/or co-curricular activities as deemed appropriate in conjunction with the school and the Iowa Department of Public Health. Additionally, medical and religious exemptions may be granted upon proper documentation as permitted by law. Masks need to be worn correctly, covering a student's mouth and nose at all times. If appropriate, teachers will designate mask break areas for students to use throughout the day if needed. Violations of this mask policy, like violations of any other policy or handbook provision, will be enforced through the district's discipline policy. The initial violation will be a warning with a note to the parents. Second violation will be an official referral, and a third and subsequent violations will invoke an out-of-school suspension from school and activities for 5 days or a policy violation, and the student will be assigned to a remote learning placement while suspended. The board reserves the right to exercise its authority under state law to exclude a student for a longer period of time if the student's conduct is deemed injurious to the health of other pupils. We do need a motion and a second to approve the first reading of board policy code number 502.12.
So can I just give a little background?
I was just going to say, I want the why behind this, right? Because the why is more important than the...
Yeah, so when we started with COVID this summer, and when the board approved the Return to Learn plan, the board gives the school, the administrative team, the authority to execute the plan. And so then if we make changes to that plan, the board continues to give through that action the administrative team the ability to execute that plan. When I was visiting with Danielle Hainfield, she thought we were on the right track. We had, kind of put things in place the way we needed to, but there was just not enough clarification for parents. And so between her and I, we've created this policy so that they understood, even though it's a health and safety measure we're taking, we're still following the discipline process, which is a little different than what we do with most other things. If it's a discipline issue, we follow the discipline process. If it's health and safety, they're out. You know what I mean? It's just a different nuance. And so to eliminate any confusion around that, suggestion is that we create a board policy that's only in use when we're in a pandemic or any kind of serious illness. So we can take it off the books when we're done with it. We don't have to keep it in our board policy, or it can be in effect when we need it for a health crisis, for example. So because it's a nuance with having health and safety considerations and discipline, she thought, and I think we all kind of talked that this would be a good direction to make sure it's clarified.
Yeah.
So that's why we're actually putting it down as a policy,
Gotcha.
as opposed to just a part of the plan that we're implementing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because deemed injurious to the health of other pupils. That's, with the CDC's change in quarantine guidance, mask up versus mask inappropriately, that's injurious when other pupils are quarantined because the one person that's not wearing the mask properly, right? Is that
correct?
Okay.
Correct.
Because that's the why that I was actually, we're not doing this three-strike policy because we're, just want to clamp down on the kids.
Right.
It's more because the kids, at least in my mind, the kids are being injured by the person that's not doing the correct thing.
Right. Or their educational opportunities are being injured by,
Right.
they're being limited or prohibited in their own educational opportunities because of a choice someone else is making by not following the rules, which becomes the discipline issue.
Yeah.
So it's just.
And it's amazing because I've had 4 discussions with parents because they don't understand why the enforcement was done that one. And it's hard to understand the why when we're just saying 3 strikes and you're going to get in trouble. But then the why is because we've had just as many discussions with these poor kids that have gone home quarantined 2, 3, 4 times, even though they're wearing their masks properly and they're doing the right thing.
Correct.
And for me, that's a harder discussion than the child that's not wearing it properly. So anyway, I know that was more.
Right, but I think it's good clarification.
Yep, I agree.
Good context.
I have a question on just this one sentence. I just need clarification, I guess, where it says, if appropriate, teachers will designate mask break areas for students to use throughout the day if needed. And I guess I'm not clear on that because I thought when we did the return to learn that we were going to designate
Yeah, it's only if
areas.
the room is small and they couldn't do it necessarily in their room, so they might have to coordinate with somebody else. So
Okay.
there are some rooms that, because we have kids spread out,
Okay.
they're trying to socially distance the kids, but there's not necessarily an area where they can have that space in there. But I think they've coordinated with the librarian that they can come down here. So the kids can take a mask break, it just might not physically be in that room.
Okay.
So that, it's just, I don't know
Okay.
if we need to take it out or not, I don't.
Well, it does say teachers will, it doesn't say they should or
Right.
anything, so it is a requirement
Yes,
that they do it.
yes.
Which is,
It's just a matter
I
of
think is what
space.
you're looking for, right? To
Yeah,
make
well,
sure
it
that-
just, the part that threw me off is if appropriate. That's why I
Oh,
wasn't
Yeah. And I
sure
think
about
that's more of
that.
a space thing. I could look at the language of that and see if I could come up with something.
I just didn't know if maybe just saying a designated mask break area will be provided for students throughout the day. if
I could do
needed.
that, yeah. Yep.
Just to make it cleaner.
Is everybody okay with that?
So,
Yep.
as we move forward with, the current situation, we see a lot of positive things happening. Hopefully, we can come out on the other side of this relatively soon. But the fact is we saw a report, or I saw a report, not we. I saw a report where maybe it was Australia, a community hadn't seen a case in like a month, and they discovered one person with it who had traveled through an airport, and the contact tracing put the closest contact they had with somebody with this at somewhere 25, 50 feet. So it's some really big number. And what it turned out was the airflow from the air conditioner had blown through there and this person was only in contact in the same area for like 5 minutes, you know? So I think we're gonna be learning a lot more in the future, which may need to necessitate changes to any kind of policy that we make. I just, you know, so this is something we can continue to work through.
Yeah,
As long as we have it as a policy,
Yeah.
it can be amended as we need to.
So I guess my question on this policy, the way I read it, it says we are requiring masks in the buildings, and in order for us to ever go mask optional or no masks, this policy is going to have to be amended. Is that
Or we
accurate?
just have to say, yes.
Because it really
Yeah.
doesn't say that we're triggering it on and off. There's no triggers here where we're saying we're in a health crisis or we're not in a health crisis. It basically
Right.
says we're wearing masks in our school according to our policy, period.
Right,
So it'll take a board action to do anything different.
correct.
That's a change to our policy that'll require 3 readings in order for it to be enacted?
Any policy is, yeah, but you could take it off and we could do a different policy, or, I mean, I think the benefit of having a policy as opposed to just the procedure of how we do things, the procedure gives us more flexibility, obviously. The policy gives more clarity for
Yep.
parents.
Yep.
And because this is such a significant,
Yeah, I'm not arguing that it should be a
But you're-
policy.
yeah, you're exactly
I agree
right.
that it should be a policy.
Now, do you- I mean-
I'm a little concerned that
it doesn't have the flexibility to move that we're gonna need it
should
to.
it be
Yeah.
when we are in a health crisis, this is what's happening.
Right.
Versus, it really doesn't say that, it's basically just saying,
Well, it says
this
during a
happens.
health crisis, but it doesn't define what that health
What
crisis is and what you're
right,
saying.
and it doesn't say if we're in a health crisis, then
Right.
we're gonna wear masks. It's just gonna say we're gonna wear masks.
Right.
Which, I agree with the policy, I just wanna make sure that if I put on my rose-colored glasses, come, August, we're
Yeah.
coming back to school, no masks, everybody's holding a hand with rainbows,
Right. Then we can
significant
remove-
policy changes.
Yeah, then we
right?
can remove this policy, we wouldn't even have to have it.
Right, and hopefully we don't have to deal with this in the future, and, I don't know, I was just wondered, is this a policy you keep on the books even after the pandemic is gone?
I don't know how you would without a trigger that would,
Yeah,
Right.
that would turn it on
Right.
or off. The question I have is, for a policy reading, can we suspend a first, second reading and do a third reading automatically?
yes.
And so we could technically call an emergency board meeting.
Well, you could waive the other 2 tonight if you wanted to, yeah.
Okay.
But,
All right,
so,
that helps. I'm just trying to understand it a little bit better.
But then we can
So-
go with an emergency and just take it out without, like tomorrow. If
Yes.
For some reason,
Correct.
like the
Or
vaccine
January
cures
1st.
everything.
Yeah, January
Modify
1st,
it
everybody's good,
optional,
we can
you know?
meet and say that policy is no longer in effect.
Gotcha.
All right, that makes me feel better about it.
Yeah.
I don't want anything
Because you don't have to do a first,
perpetuity.
second, third reading to remove a policy, just to approve the policy.
As it reads, I don't think perpetuity is what you want.
No, I don't want perpetuity on the mask policy.
Maybe you would want
So-
to just make it the emergency tonight, just to get it in place, right?
Well, we already have the authority to act on it. I mean, that's not the issue. I mean, you could waive the next 2, right? I mean, I think it would help with clarity for parents, but, and it's kind of a unique situation because we've already enacted, so parents have had the opportunity to give you feedback. We know
Right.
some don't like it and some do.
Right.
I mean, so you already have kind of the opinion, but probably more so than any other board policy we've really probably done, at least since I've been here. But yeah, we can do it any number of ways, but
And since, given that it's already enforced, I'd be worried about the optics, right? It looks like we're rushing something through by not having a first, second, and third reading.
Right.
And it's just the perception that, what'd you get together and all do on that? Nobody's here, right? Not nobody. But,
Yep.
so
Well,
that's all I would be worried about if we did an emergency.
Well, the other perception is it's so permanent. The way it looks right
That's-
now, it is just so
That's-
permanent.
That's where
and
my
I think
concern is.
That's what
kind of
I'm,
my concern, too.
that's just seeing it as a board policy as opposed to part of the return. It's just
Right.
2 different things to me.
Okay.
And besides that, then the second part is the health crisis. I mean, when you're putting it in as a board policy, should there be definition to what a health crisis is. I mean, we have an example, but
Right.
I don't know if just calling a health crisis, anybody could call the flu season as a health crisis. I mean, it's just up to interpretation. So at what point do you say, we're going to enact this mask use in a health crisis?
Can we put that on the board to decide what a health crisis is and what it isn't? I mean, versus trying to get a true definition of what a health crisis is. I mean, that
A
could
health
be,
crisis,
that
a
could
crisis
be
is
huge, right?
Right.
But no, I agree. I think there needs to be a little bit of definition there.
Yeah.
on
Sure.
What's,
I think it's too broad the way it is right now with the term health crisis.
Do you want me to put something to the effect that it'll be the Board of Education? I mean, and kind of to your point, I don't know that you want to have it just be the Board of Education. Like, we've got, you know, something, it's always going to be with public health, I think. I mean, I think that these
Yeah.
can always be kind of a
Right.
joint understanding. So I think that if we put health crisis will be determined by the Board of Education and the Iowa Department of Public Health.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
That'll shoulder some of the blame.
That's right.
Well, but I'm not
So we don't have a-
official, right? I can't make
No,
a recommendation to you guys about health crises.
wanna-
I just, I'm not, it's not my area. You don't want it to be.
I mean, ultimately, the idea is we get through this and we never have to deal with it again. I mean, that's what we want, right? That's the,
Yeah.
Is
because
this,
we haven't dealt with it before.
Yep.
And so,
is this consistent with what other schools are doing?
I didn't even ask.
But it is a recommendation from our lawyer to put
Correct.
it in policy.
Correct.
Okay.
and I would venture to say other schools are grappling with masks probably a lot more than we are in terms of what to do.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, so I have, the way that it reads now is the first paragraph, the board recognizes the need to ensure students and staff are able to learn in a safe learning environment to the extent possible during a health crisis. Example of COVID-19 pandemic. A health crisis will be determined by the Board of Education and the Iowa Department of Public Health. And then it goes into exceptions. And then the next paragraph, I have masks need to be worn correctly, covering a student's mouth and nose at all times. A designated mask break area will be provided for students to use throughout the day. And those are the changes that I have. Any others that you want to recommend? Do you want me to put something in about that this policy will be enacted or retracted?
As
I mean,
the
it's always
situation
based
warrants.
on the board. I mean,
As the situation.
Is there,
warrants.
yeah.
is there an
Well, I mean,
overall
I don't know what
cover
you-
earlier in that says that these can be changed at any time by the board?
Well,
I mean, a kind of a statement?
well, if you change the policy, it has to be a 3. I mean, you always do
Right,
the
right,
policy
but is there
3.
something that says that, you know, any of the policies in here can be changed so that we can refer back to that and say, you know, we can change that once.
Yeah, it's just, I mean,
I
That's
mean, the
just-
board creates policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, I just didn't know if there was like an overarching thing to help people understand that.
I can't
To
remember if
me-
there's 1 in 200 or not.
Yeah. To me, if we're going to leave this policy in even after the pandemic is over, 5 years from now,
Right.
if this
Then we need to
policy's still
trigger.
there and just basically lays dormant until or hopefully
Right.
never there is another need to enact it.
Right.
But is it even going to be relevant to anything else?
I hope not.
Yeah, nothing in our lifetime, hopefully.
I go back to that flu or whatever it was last fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That knocked out, what percent of our,
23%.
and now that the health department, right, sees that people can do this.
Yep.
I'm not so sure that it's gone forever. But I hope it is. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
because I smile and people can't see that.
You need a mask with a smile.
So the way we have it right now, it is in force until we
Take it out.
take it out on any given day.
Correct.
But again, as the board, if they declare this thing over and we're all good and everybody can open their windows again, we can call an emergency meeting and waive the 3 readings and do away with it if we really needed to. We do have flexibility in that realm.
Yeah, you don't have to even have 3 readings to delete it. You just delete it. It's no longer in effect. We just say we're going to strike. Is that, am I even speaking correctly? I probably have to think that through before I say that.
Just rewrite it or state that it's no longer in effect.
Right.
I personally like it just because it's going to give clarity, because those 2 or 3 conversations that I've had have been all over the map. With what the understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it is. So.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's
put
debating
something-
that. I think it's really about whether it's a policy that's going to stay in place or a policy that's going to be deleted and go away. That's.
So do you want me to put something to the effect of this policy will be enacted or will be in effect at during a time determined by the Board of Education? I mean, because then it's the trigger, is the board has to say, yep, we're going to put that in effect, or no, we're not. Because then it's just a verbal, we have a meeting, you say, yep, we're going to do it, or no, we're not. I mean, the board's going to have to trigger this regardless.
It's just a matter of, do we have to trigger it by changing policy or just by...
Right, or just, having the conversation and say we need to enact that.
Yeah. To me, policies shouldn't be created with the goal of changing them in the future, right?
Permanence.
Correct.
Some should, some,
Right.
If we're splitting hairs, we're splitting hairs here, I guess.
Well, that's the easy add.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it goes without saying, but I can be explicit in here. So this policy will be enacted and retracted by the Board of Education as needed. Then it doesn't have to be, we take the policy all out, it just sits there, and then if we need it, you put it back in place, and if you don't.
That's how I'd like to see it.
Okay, I can add that.
So it'll be so interesting to see how it dephases too, right? With the
Yeah.
vaccine and, how coming off is gonna be just as interesting as going on.
It's going to be
a little
it's going to be
harder.
worse. Because it's going to be more political.
It will.
It's going to be.
Oh, it's gonna be.
People are going to want us to move faster on that.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be fascinating.
Ted, I'm going to talk about that today.
So we need a motion to approve the first reading
With those changes.
with those changes.
And then I'll type up a new one for you so those will be the changes.
And then we'll debate it again for the
That's okay.
minutes at the
That's all
second
right. I'm
reading.
okay with that. I'd rather get it right.
We'll get the perfect one by the 3rd.
I'll move to approve the first reading of the Board Policy Series 502.12 as discussed in this meeting with the changes.
Second then. It has been properly moved and seconded that we approve the first reading of Board Policy 502.12 with changes that were discussed. Is that, was it encapsulated? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Fitness Center Supervisor.
So yes, this is our last thing on here. Really, again, it's a position that we're looking at, really a couple hours a day for 4 days a week. We currently have our fitness center open to our athletes, our students, from 3:15 until 5:15. However, we know that there are a lot of teams in there right now. because we're making our practices smaller. So the other half, half will be in the gym or in the weight room or in the wrestling room, and the other half will be in the fitness center. And so it may prohibit some of our athletes that aren't in sports right now from being in there. So we want to extend the time, but because we know the fitness center is one area where we have seen some abuse of our COVID guidelines, we want to put somebody in there to supervise, an associate to supervise, and then also keep it open possibly over a couple hours where our students come in over break, because we want them to have the opportunities, we want them to be here. So we're looking at a person 2 hours a day from 5:15 or 5:30 until 7:30, so we can extend those hours for our students. This isn't necessarily people who have membership passes, these are just our students who can come in and use it when there's somebody here. So
will that restrict the community during those hours?
we'll
Just
still let
students?
community come in. I mean, we just want to open it up so there's an opportunity. If you're not an in-season athlete, you still can come in even if you don't have a membership. Because right now, because our athletes are coming in after school, that's limiting those other students from coming in.
And does that cross-contaminate cohorts?
Oh, yeah.
The public and,
Oh, yeah.
it's not a concern.
But we have community spread. I mean, Sharon Miller, our Department of Public Health will tell you there's community spread at the gas station or anywhere you go.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
So it's still limited to 10 people?
the person who's
now?
coming in, part of that job description, I apologize
Oh,
for
yeah, yeah,
interrupting,
yeah.
but their job is to clean the equipment, so make sure that gets done regularly. So it's actually probably safer to come in
Right.
during that 5:30 to 7:30 time, as long as there's not more than 10 people in here. Just because that's being done. We still do the deep clean on Monday mornings, and people are still supposed to be accountable for cleaning the equipment before and after they use it, but that's not happening all the time.
Is there still a 10-person limit inside there?
We have it at 10 now, yeah. It's, I think, half capacity, but because of the way ours is set up, I mean, we could probably go to 15, but we were at 10, and so we didn't see the need to change it.
Has there been an issue? Has there been people not being able to get in?
Not that I've heard of not getting in. We've had some people letting other people in, which I think has been a kind of an ongoing issue, but it's more so more than 10, and sometimes not socially distancing, and that's when we have primarily our kids in there. I think typically when they're with family or, they don't seem to have as many of those issues. But if we're going to open it to students, then we kind of feel like because we're putting these measures in place, then we have to supervise it.
So you do have in this, you're talking about during continued COVID. So is this something you're looking at putting in place for the rest of this year and then not having?
Yeah, I
after
think
this?
once our numbers go, once we can not be restricted on how many people we can have in there, and we don't have all the safety cleaning protocols, then yeah, we're looking at saying, okay, that's. And if we don't get a student in there, then we're not, or if we don't get a supervisor in there, then we don't have the extended hours. So it's not that we're gonna, if I can be there, then I can be there and we can have extended hours, or Keegan can, but if we don't have somebody in there, then we're not gonna offer extended hours for students. So we're just trying to find more opportunities to get them in.
So are you posting this?
Yes.
Oh.
Right now, my college son is doing it until we get somebody hired for it. He's real excited about that. He's all on break.
Voluntold.
Voluntold, yeah.
Yeah.
But he applied to be a sub-associate here for the month that he's home, so he's gonna learn some things.
Well, I guess I'd say I think this is the right thing to do, just, anything that we can give our kids an opportunity to get in there and do something, Everybody needs, looking for things to do during COVID.
Yeah.
So.
I think those restrictions are sometimes harder than kids want them to be. I think sometimes they think, oh, well, we can have 15 kids in here, it's not a big deal. Well, that's where it starts to, things start to go downhill instead of where we want them to be, so. So Keegan put the job description on there, so I need that approved. I know it doesn't say that on there, but I would need that job description approved.
Okay. So we need a,
I'll move to approve the job description for fitness center supervisor.
Second.
some properly moved and seconded that we approve the job description for fitness center supervisor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Our next meeting looks like it should be Monday, January 25th at 6 p.m. here in the media center. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.